We don't have to talk about Judy. We don't have to talk about Judy at all. Hi guys, Emma here, and today I'm going to be talking about some thoughts, theories and questions I've had since the last episode of Twin Peaks Part 15. And I'm just going to be referring to a few scenes and storylines that we had in this episode rather than go over them scene by scene. I don't want to formulate an endgame theory right now, because I feel like we are so close to the end that anything that I might say that I'm thinking about what might happen towards the end might spoil it for other people. So I'm just gonna go off this episode and try not to jump ahead and make any predictions about what might be happening in the final episode. The first thing I wanted to talk about was Agent Cooper, because a lot of people were saying after this episode that he had finally woke up. I don't think that he was fully awake. I think that he took a giant leap towards awakening, prompted by the name Gordon Cole in the clip from Sunset Boulevard. And I think that we had already seen before that he was perhaps starting to think independently, because he was moving the salt cellars around on the table and he was pressing the buttons as if he was trying to almost awaken himself in some way. The first thing that he thought about after he heard the name Gordon Cole was trying to get back into the place that he'd come from, which was kind of strange, because why would you want to go back there? Was he actually trying to get back there, or was he just trying to electrocute himself because he knew that he had become the Dougie persona and he had lost himself once he had stuck his face into that electrical portal in the magenta room? So was he actually just trying to give himself an electric shock by sticking the fork into the plug, or was he actually trying to go back in? Doesn't seem likely that he'd want to go back, but maybe he was confused. Maybe he knows that he needs to go back out in a different way. He can't be himself unless he goes back in and regains his senses back inside. I certainly think that that moment when he was electrocuted is going to lead to him awakening pretty soon. He obviously seemed to know that the electricity might help in bringing him back, and with the theme of electricity and the connections that the electricity has in Twin Peaks as a whole, it makes sense that he perhaps would be drawn to doing this action to get himself back to normal, back to Dale Cooper. I think that it's the right time for Cooper to come back. I don't think I would be happy if Cooper never came back and Cooper remained as Dougie for the whole series, and I think almost he was starting to morph into Dougie a little bit. I think if Cooper doesn't wake up, then he will become Dougie. He will just assume everything Dougie had. His son, he will assume the responsibility of being the father, he will assume the responsibility of Dougie's job, he has already assumed the responsibility of being Janie's husband, being a man who eats what Dougie eats, who spends his time with people who Dougie did. Cooper's awakening can't come soon enough for me, to be honest. A lot of people have noticed that the scene with Janie and Dougie seems to mirror the scene at the end in the roadhouse with the girl who was picked up off the seat, put on the floor, and then she crawls over on her hands and knees in the same way Dougie does. And as Dougie sticks his fork into the socket and becomes electrocuted, the girl screams. Now, why would that scene be mirrored? That's such an interesting thing to have noticed, any fan to have noticed that. And I keep going back to this notion of there being two realities, maybe two distinct realities, or the idea that Twin Peaks and the events in Twin Peaks are somehow able to reflect what's going on in an outside world. So Twin Peaks is sort of like a microcosm, and when this girl does this behavior, this strange behavior, she is picking up on something that's happening outside the town, but which ultimately matters to the town of Twin Peaks, to the story of what's going on between dark and good, good and evil, I should say. I mean, when the girl says she's waiting for someone, is she waiting for good Coop to emerge? Is she waiting for something good to come to the town of Twin Peaks and save her from this kind of treatment, from this horrible behavior that she's been subject to? It almost feels like she's living Dale Cooper's struggle as she crawls across the floor, and the scream at the end is perhaps Dale's scream. Everything that he's feeling, being trapped inside that Dougie persona, not being able to say what's going on, not be able to formulate his thoughts properly, and not being able to physically act like the real Dale Cooper as well. I love that roadhouse scene, I have to say. I think it was very, very powerful. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Philip Jeffries scene because honestly I was scared during that scene. Okay, so there are a couple of interesting things in this sequence, in this scene, that are worth mentioning. The first one is something I didn't notice but that other fans have picked up on, and that is the fact that the jumping man, his face transforms into Sarah Palmer at one point. And you can actually see this on YouTube. There's a video of it slowed down, and you can also hear some direction, apparently to the actor. But basically, it does look like Sarah Palmer's face. And what does this mean? Does it mean that the jumping man was showing Evil Cooper that Sarah had been claimed? Or does it mean that Sarah Palmer has actually been part of this all along, and that her form is morphed with the evil form of the jumping man? I think perhaps the mask that the jumping man is wearing is like a blank slate to show the faces of other people, the faces of those who have been manipulated or claimed or corrupted, and maybe that Sarah Palmer was just one of these faces that he is able to show to those who come to the convenience store. The next thing I thought was interesting was the woman who appears just before Evil Coop goes in to meet Jeffries. And I thought the fact that she said, "I'll unlock that door for you," was very intriguing because of the fact that that sentence could be read another way, because it could just mean "I'll unlock the door for you" as it's standing here, or it could mean "I'll unlock the mystery for you." So is this character important? Is she more important than we imagine? Is she Judy? Is she the girl with the frog moth grown up? The idea of her unlocking the door for Evil Coop to meet Jeffries, I think, seemed pretty significant the way that it played out. I don't know if it means anything, but Kirsten Hayward was wearing a key around her neck later on in the episode, and I don't know if that connects to anything in this scene, but I just thought the unlocking of something seemed to be pretty important. We could even link in the Audrey scene with that theme, because Audrey, there is something not right there. Does she need to have her mind unlocked in the same way that Good Coop needs to have his mind unlocked? Are they all waiting to break free from whatever confines that they have? Audrey obviously seemed like she didn't really want to leave, because Charlie gave her multiple chances just to say, "Come on, let's go then." And she chose not to take those chances. She decided just to instigate another fight with Charlie and to prevent him from going out, and herself with him as well. I mean, there must be a reason why she can't leave herself on her own. I think the idea that Audrey is in a psychiatric unit are pretty plausible, considering that in that scene with the girl at Roadhouse, the one that was warning her to stay away from the nut house could have meant Audrey's place of residence. And I also think that there is plausibility in the theory that Audrey is still in a coma. We haven't seen anything that resembles acknowledgement of Richard in Audrey's life, so it's like she's never known him or has disowned him. She actually seems scared in those scenes as well when she was confronting Charlie, and I think that this scene, now that we've had a few of these Audrey scenes, highlights the fact that Sherilyn Fenn is an amazing actress, because she is playing this part really, really well of a confused woman, a person who we don't know entirely what her deal is yet, but whatever it is, she is really performing it well and really giving us a sense that Audrey is in trouble. I don't know if there was a moment of awakening for Audrey at the end of her scene, because she said to Charlie that she had never seen him like this before, and it was almost as if she had seen him for the first time. She'd never seen him as he was. She attacked him, and I'm wondering actually if Charlie even exists, or whether he is actually Audrey's own fear, manifestation of fear, and a fragment of herself that has broken off and that is stopping her from living her life to the full. An imaginary creation, if you like, who... Oh, shut up. her evil angel, if you like, the angel on her shoulder that tells her to do something bad, and her real self is trying to fight against him. Certainly she seemed to target all her negative energy towards Charlie in this scene, almost as if she wanted to kill him, as if she wanted to eradicate him. And if that's so, if Charlie is just a representation of her fear, then that's a hopeful thing for Audrey, and that she might also be having a important awakening in this episode. Okay, so sorry if this is jumbled up a bit, but going back to the convenience store scene, the idea that Cooper has already met Judy. When Jeffrey said, "You are Cooper, so you are Cooper," either that was a question or a statement, right? So did he mean that the good Coop had met Judy at some point, rather than the evil Coop? I think that he probably did, and I think that there are a couple of candidates for Judy who perhaps are more obvious than others. So I think maybe Nato is Judy. It would make a great deal of sense if Judy was in fact Major Briggs, considering the fact that he mentioned Judy Garland one time, and also the fact that his name is Garland, connecting to Judy. However, Jeffries suggests that Judy is someone that Cooper can meet. How can Judy be Major Briggs? Because that actor is no longer with us and could not play that part unless they brought him back in a similar kind of way to the way that they've brought Jeffries back. Another thing that I thought was interesting was Richard. Now, Richard's story has really intrigued me, and I'm curious as to where they are going with Richard. I thought that maybe evil Coop had been keeping an eye on Richard all of his life, and maybe schooling him to be one of the dark forces who could perhaps help him. But obviously when they meet, evil Coop doesn't really know who Richard is, but he knows that he is Audrey's son once Richard tells him. So it doesn't appear that, you know, evil Coop had him earmarked as someone he was trying to corrupt. So that's all on Richard, I guess. Richard and his upbringing, and perhaps some influences like Red and Chad. I thought that it was interesting the way that Richard mentions that Audrey had Cooper's picture, but he knows nothing beyond that because of the fact that he could have asked Audrey about who Cooper was. He could have known a great deal more than what he knows, that he appears to know about Cooper, but the fact that he doesn't suggests to me that Audrey is either sick or in an institution or in a coma. The fact that Richard has teamed up with evil Coop suggests that there is going to be some kind of showdown with Audrey and good Coop. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it there today because I really, at this point, I think I have a lot of questions, probably more questions than theories, although as I say, I kind of have formulated an endgame theory, as I'm sure that many of you have, but I feel like anything could happen basically because of what's gone on. I mean, every episode we get, I'm like left with the impression, how could that have happened? We could never have imagined that in a million years, and I almost feel like that's just where we're gonna end up as well in the end, that nothing is predictable, that nothing we can theorize is what's going to happen. Okay, so thanks for watching today. You can leave your thoughts and theories and comments in the comment section below, and that's it. Bye!